and welcome to the Switch for Good podcast. I'm Alexandra Paul, and hi, Dotsie, my wonderful co-host, Dotsie Bausch.
Good morning and good afternoon in other places.
That's right. Good evening in some. Dotsie, I've been really thinking so much about Proposition 12, which was the proposition that California voters passed. It was a groundbreaking proposition in terms of its protection of farm animals. We passed it in 2018, and it's supposed to be fully implemented by the end of 2021. And basically just an overview, and anybody who wants to read more about Prop 12, and actually it sounds very intimidating to read a proposition, but it's actually not that difficult and not very long or wordy. There's not a lot of legalese or anything like that. So, but you can go to ballotpedia.com, I think it is, and they will give you the language of the proposition so you can fully understand it. But basically, it covers the how big the pens are supposed to be for calves that are raised for veal, pigs that are breeding, and it sets confinement rules and basically the sort of types of things that need to be there for the enrichment of egg-laying chickens. So it leaves out a lot of animals, but it covers a lot of animals too. And you need to read the prop to really understand that, for example, for the pigs, we all know about those terrible gestation crates that pigs are in, where the mother pigs can't move at all during the time when they're pregnant and when they're suckling. But the proposition gives them more room when they are pregnant, but for about a month, they are still confined to these terrible crates. 5 days before they give birth, and then for about 20 until the babies are weaned, which is about 23 weeks. So there's about a month where they're still confined in these crates. Proposition 12, at first I felt like, wait, this proposition doesn't go far enough, but now I see really that any movement forward for animals is worthy, and I really think Proposition 12 is going to make a big dent in the veal business because it it expands so much the size of the pens that veal calves are supposed to have to be raised in. Before, that was just basically 13 square feet, and it's been enlarged to 43 square feet. So that's 3 times larger, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it also means that any food products from these animals cannot be brought into California. So not only can they not be raised in California, the food products from animals who aren't raised like this cannot be brought into California. So there's a lot of good in this proposition. This is a shout out to activists all over. We need to make sure that California oversees the implementation and make sure that farmers are complying, because this is a huge job. And the California Department of Food and Agriculture is the department that is supposed to oversee this. Now, when I went to their website, because I sent them an email saying, hello, how are you going to oversee and make sure that these farms are complying? I did not get an answer back, but I was concerned because the vet for the California Department of Agriculture speaks on behalf, it says on your bio, farmers and farms. And this concerned me because if you're too allied with farmers and farms, you're not going to be a very good overseer. It's just human nature for
right. You don't want anyone over their oversight committee being themselves. It would be like if I was in charge of putting myself on the Olympic team. I mean, of course
exactly.
It's
going to happen.
So,
but in this case, it won't happen, yes, if the folks at the California Department of Food and Agriculture
because what's in it for them to implement it? They know it's a law, but that doesn't mean much. And we learned that in this we got this kerfuffle going based on one of my experiences at a California hospital a few months ago, because we passed a law here in California that was to go into effect January of 2020, that there be a plant-based meal offering for every single patient in a hospital and person who's in a prison. And I had dear friend who was in a terrible accident, and he was in a coma for about a month and then came out of the coma. And I went into the hospital, my vegan crazy self. He's been vegan for way longer than I have, over 20 years. And they're feeding him dairy through his feeding tube. And then when he wakes up, or, feeding him everything, and it's not a plant-based offering. And I had a conversation with a few of the nurses. They had no idea what I was talking about. So very good point of just, there's no oversight. No one actually implemented. Nobody went around to all of the hospitals and said, hey, hello, this law was passed. You have to offer this. So you get, we do a lot of celebrating when something gets passed of this nature, including Prop 12, but then who's going to implement it? Who's going to oversight the implementation? Exactly. So I commend you for writing in and just, getting your feathers in a flurry over this and getting activists to. So what are we going to do?
It's not enough just to vote. We've got to make sure that these new great laws that animal activists have passed and animal lovers all over the state have passed. Now we got to make sure they are implemented. So folks, you need to contact the California Department of Food and Agriculture and ask them, how are you implementing? How are you making sure? Sorry, not how are you implementing? How you make it's up to the farmers to implement.
Right.
How are you making sure that farmers are complying with this law, and hold them to account? And if there's enough pressure from the public, they'll know that there are eyes on them.
Right. And we'll see how this unfolds. We'll keep you guys posted on the podcast because I have a feeling this is going to become a full-blown campaign. I just have a feeling.
Dottie, if you're at the head of a campaign, then the California Department of Food and Agriculture needs to step up their game.
Yeah, you started it, sister.
Speaking of games, though.
Yeah, right? I know. Gosh, we're in for a wild show, I think. Just super stoked on this. So today's guest is it's a first of its kind on our show. We are going to have a conversation with Danieal Negreanu, who is a world-class poker player and Poker Hall of Famer. He has, to me, just one of the most interesting backstories. At 21, well, he started playing when he was quite young, and we're going to go through that with him. But at 21, he moved to Las Vegas and lost. He went through a few cycles of winning his money in Toronto and losing it again in Vegas. But at 23, he became the youngest poker player to win a World Series poker bracelet. And that's where he got the name Kid Poker. He has had decades-long career, and he's won over $42 million. This is what is just so wild and cool, and we're going to talk about. He feels amazing after going vegan in 2006. Why'd he go vegan? We're going to dive into that. He realized animal products were weighing him down and making him feel sluggish at the tournament table. So just super fascinated by your story, Danieal. Welcome to the Switch for Good podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. Was it 2006? I thought it was earlier than that. I think I did like the vegetarian thing for a year and around 2002, 2003, okay. Made the transition, and then was like, well, I don't think I'm doing much better just eating cheese pizzas. Right. So I made the full switch over to vegan.
I love it. So maybe 2004 or something like that. You've been vegan longer than I have.
In that neighborhood, it's hard I'm not really good with time and years, but I remember, making the transition and slowly transitioning over, which for a lot of friends I have who are making the consideration to do that, I say that's usually a pretty good idea, is to start, to make it a gradual thing, because it's very, very drastic for a lot of people. And the number one question I get from people is like, why? What am I going to eat? Like they
Absolutely.
They think they're so limited. And like, well, I don't know what am I supposed to eat? So
yeah. And isn't it so much? It's so much easier now. Like as you guide people through it. When I guide people through it, I mean, it's like I was like 2010, mid 2010, and even then there were not a ton of options, and now it's a whole thing. So it's super easy to help people, especially with their transition foods, than it was in 2004, no doubt. Especially in the middle of the country. I'm from Kentucky, and they just got a Whole Foods there like 6 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I remember the first time I used to go to Tunica, Mississippi. This was years ago, and I was vegan at the time already. And, it was in the middle of nowhere, right? And I'd go down there, and I'm looking to eat something. I didn't really know what they have. And I go down there for breakfast, and it's like fried chicken and bacon. And I asked if they had like cereal or anything. He's like, we got fried chicken. I was like, yeah, but no. Right? So that was a struggle. It ended up being a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But today, as you mentioned, like here in Vegas where I live, if you look on Postmates or whatever, there's just like endless amount of, vegan options. If you're into Vietnamese food, there's like a solely Vietnamese place. You've got a wide variety of different options for people. And it's certainly a lot easier now than it was back then.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I mean, I'm in Orange County, and I feel like Vegas has even more vegan food than LA. Our director of operations lives in Vegas, and she just makes me so jealous. I mean, it literally is every type, authenticity, classification of types of food. There's a vegan version in Vegas. It's incredible.
Yeah, they do a great job. And even like, obviously right now with COVID, there's not a lot of going on, but like at the Wynn and Encore, right? So for a lot of people that are vegan, you want to go to dinner with other people, and sort of be respectful of that. And like at the Wynn and Encore, every single restaurant there has like a comprehensive, like fine dining vegan menu where they use like Gardein, for a lot of their meat substitutes and things like that. And it's really great. It allows you to like kind of, I don't know if feeling normal would be the best way to describe it, but like having the topic of conversation not always be about, so where do you get your protein? People looking at me funny,
Are both those casinos owned by Steve Wynn? Because I understand he's vegan.
Well, I know that the woman that he's after his wife, I think that is, involved with, she was vegan, and I think he pushed mostly plant-based. There's a lot of people that like are under this microscope, like, oh no, he ate some butter, or he ate whatever. So I don't think he is to the extreme, but I think even, there's the movement called the reducitarian movement, which is like, even that, if you're going to make that step, I think that overall, that's a really good thing for all of us. I obviously have extreme views, in being a vegan myself, but I do appreciate people making an effort to be conscious of what they're putting into their body and, how it affects the world.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say extreme views, because I find the mainstream extreme. Because to me, eating 3 meals a day of meat or fried food or sitting a lot, that just seems not so unnatural. I feel like I'm actually going back to my human roots.
Yeah, no question about it. Like our ancestors didn't eat like 3 meals of meat a day. Like they would, sort of have an animal and then they would eat that throughout the week. And it is important to note too, though, that like, whatever diet people are choosing, like there's a healthy way to do it and there's an unhealthy way. Yeah. Like you can be a junk food vegan and it's like, it's tasty, it's yummy. You're not contributing to, animal abuse and things like that, but you're not exactly doing so well either if all you're doing is eating cakes and cookies.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
All right. So tell me if I have this number correct. You started gambling, playing poker at 16?
Right around 16, 17, yeah.
Okay. And it sounds like you really loved the competition side and the aspects of probability and numbers. And so you kept going with it. You left high school and you started playing full time. Take us back to that time and your parents. How did they feel about this newfound love and the fact that you were already starting to make a living at such a young age?
Right. So my parents, were typical European parents from Romania, and my mother was like, she didn't understand it, and she's like, Daniel, forget about the poker. You go to school. Right. And I was like, I was a very cocky, kid as a teenager, and I'd be in class, and it wasn't difficult. School was never a problem for me, especially mathematics. And I would look at my teacher and I'd have this idea in my head. I'm like, I make more money than you do now at 17 by playing poker. So why should I listen to you? I was very like, arrogant, if you will, to say the least. So, I mean, I knew then that if I had to fall back on school or something like that, I always could. But poker was a passion. I've always had a competitive mindset, and I wasn't going to make it in the NBA or the NHL, and I was too tall to be a jockey. So it didn't leave me a lot of options, but poker satisfied that competitive urge for sure.
I had to look up how to play poker, and what I found so interesting is that it has to do with math and with skill in terms of understanding people. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's many facets to playing poker, right? First and foremost is the fundamentals of the game, right? Everything is probability based. There's 52 cards in the deck, right? Well, what are the odds that one of the cards you need comes on the next card? Well, there's 14 of them of 42. So now you do that math. Now you're doing, pot odds calculation. There's $1,000 in the pot. My opponent's bet 300. I'm getting about 3-1. Compare that to, the odds of me catching my card. Then you factor in, all right, what type of hand does my opponent play in these situations? Are they someone who bluffs a lot? Can I get anything from their physical nature in terms of the way that they're sitting or they're standing, or any body language tells? So there's a wide variety of things that can make you a skilled poker player, but it combines, for the most part, understanding basic mathematical, fundamentals of the game, as well as sort of people reading skills and getting inside people's head in terms of how they think.
Mm-hmm. So am I right? The pictures that I've seen of you at the table, you're not much of a sunglass guy. While the other ones,
no, I'm heavily opposed to sunglasses. Yeah.
Yeah, I never saw any on you. And the way you're describing it's like it completely removes when they wear the sunglasses and a whole aspect of the game. And
yes,
so it feels like cheating.
Yes and no. So they can cover their eyes, but I find that a lot of people who wear sunglasses have this sort of aura that they believe that they're protected. Like, well, you can't see my eyes. Yeah, but I can see your neck. I can see your fingers as they press into the felt. I can see your body posture. I can see your heart rate. I can see all those other things, right? So you may be blocking one thing, but that doesn't mean that you're immune to being, giving away body language information.
Right.
I'm an actress by trade, and so tell me what you've had to teach yourself in terms of how you present to other people so that they won't know what you're thinking or feeling. I actually have to do the opposite as an actor. I'm supposed to project what I'm thinking and feeling, but sort of. But anyway, so tell me what you've learned.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. You bring up, being an actress, and it reminds me of a story real quickly I'll tell. When I was playing the pot with Tobey Maguire, who you guys know from Spider-Man films and whatever, and he's an avid poker player. And I remember as he was learning, and I was talking to him a little bit about poker, we were in a cash game, and there was a situation where he bet a lot of money in the end, and I started counting because we were using real money. I started counting my money like I was going to call, and he reached for his cards to turn them face up really quickly. Well, when someone does that, that's a sign that they're excited about their hand, they're happy with it, and that they have a very good hand, right? So, because if they didn't, they'd be like, ugh, this isn't good. So I see that, I take my money, I put it away, he shows me a complete bluff. And then I think to myself, wow, his acting skills extend to the poker table. That was pretty darn good. But in terms of things I've learned, I've learned a lot about how other people, sort of deal with adversity and when they're stressed, like what sort of things to look for. I've always been a very talkative player at the table because that's my comfort zone when I'm talking. And I know that it makes my opponents uncomfortable and they give away things that I don't typically do. So one of the things I learned is just sort of how to pry information by misdirection and also by just doing a lot of jibber jabber.
So like, what are you talking? News of the day, not the game, just other conversations about anything.
Well, sometimes. So that's leading up. Say, for example, you're sitting at a poker table for 8 to 10 hours with somebody. The more information I know about somebody, the more I'll be able to understand how they think, right? So like, what do you do for a living? Okay, well, I'm a Sunday school teacher. Okay. Possible link to maybe she thinks bluffing is immoral, so maybe she won't bluff as much, right? And then you're like, what do you do? I'm a lawyer. I'm like, okay, so you're like a twister of the truth. You're a bluffer. You're full of it. You're going to try to be tricky and, and screw with my head and stuff like that. So that's stuff I would do outside of, when a hand is actually being played. During the hand, I often talk aloud where I'm not even looking at the person. So I might be looking over to the left, talking to somebody else, going, I can't believe I do this to myself. I always put myself in these stupid situations. Out of the corner of my eye, I'm watching my opponent to get a reaction. Are they comfortable? Are they giggling? If I say sort of the strength of my hand, does that affect how their body posture changes? I remember one spot, there was a guy, I was talking to someone else doing that. He was giggling, right? And then I mentioned, well, but maybe he only has ace jack. And he did. And his smile went to like, ooh. Like, so I made the call, and was right. So there's a lot of, subtle things you can do to get information. But like, again, the more you know about someone's daily life, the more you're going to know how they approach, poker.
Yeah. So, okay, you're obviously a pro times a million. How do these amateur hour people that you have to read and understand get onto the table with you? I was just assuming that there was 20 of you that are the best in the world and you play each other all the time. Sometimes you're just playing, like you just go sit down at a table in Vegas?
Well, obviously not right now during COVID, but
no, free, yeah.
My level, at the highest level, it is predominantly professional players, but the game is usually built around a couple recreational players. And unlike the NBA or PJ, you can't just sit down and play basketball with Michael Jordan or go golf with Tiger Woods.
Right.
But in poker, you can. You can buy into a tournament. The World Series of Poker main event is a $10,000 buy-in. Anybody can play. Anybody who wants to play. The hometown heroes or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
And you can rub shoulders with the elite. At the highest level, typically what happens is you have a wealthy businessman or two who want to play poker, and the pros all have enough money to gamble with this player, and then they're basically all, profiting for the most part off of sort of the weak link or two.
Do you gamble with your own money, or do you get sponsored and you gamble with their money?
Yeah, no, I gamble with my own money. I do have sponsorship deals. I work as an ambassador for GG Poker, which is an online poker site that you can play, not unfortunately in the United States, but pretty much everywhere else. So, I have deals like that. I also, do a class for masterclass.com, which was really like a great experience. And, so there's other things on the side that I make money from. But in terms of when I'm gambling, those are all decisions I make on my own, and I'm not playing with other people's money. Occasionally I do, is sort of like to give back, if you will, give people a chance to like have a piece of me, in a tournament, and they could buy a little percentage and stuff like that. I do that not because I need the money, but because I think it's kind of fun and engaging.
I'm super interested in your training to prepare for the table as an athlete. I love hearing what are all the odd things that you might do that people may not guess, or some they may, to prepare. And I really enjoyed watching the series Queen's Gambit, and she would play chess on the ceiling in her orphanage, and I would do laps at night in my dreams on the track, and would wake up and then finish off that ride or something. It was always envisioning it, and obviously there was physical training too. But from a mental perspective, what does your training look like?
Well, I would imagine poker, similar to, athletics today, has changed in terms of how people prepare, right? Like in the 70s and 80s, people didn't know as much about diet and about analytics and about, studying game film. And like now you have, all these sort of, you got the Apple Watch, the Whoop band, and all this extra information that you can use. Well, with poker, it's very, very similar now that there's been some AI developed. We call them solvers. And essentially, for the first time ever in the last few years, we have computer outputs where you can have artificial intelligence play against each other and come up with what's called the game theory optimal solution, right? So this is the new study tool that poker players are using away from the table. It is very complicated. It is very difficult. It's challenged me to learn the game in a new way. Because in the past, I'd think about poker in terms of like, all right, this person does this person does this, without actually having a definitive answer that we, to a certain degree, have now. So for me, preparation looks like, after a session, typically I will do a review of it where the intricate spots, the spots I wasn't sure about, did I do the right thing? I will run that into a solver and sort of figure out, okay, well, this was a mistake. How big of a mistake? What can I do differently in these situations? How do I improve upon it? And outside of that, when it comes to preparing for a tournament, number one, most important thing for me is sleep. So I'm a good sleeper. I sleep 8 hours a night, no problem. My wife, unfortunately, isn't as lucky in that regard. She's up all night. But so there's sleep. And then typically what I do is the night before is kind of be alone. Like I exert a lot of energy when I'm around other people. So I charge my batteries when I'm alone. So I typically just, stay in my room, if you will, and make sure I get good rest and sort of think about, what I'm going to be doing the next day in terms of the tournament and who I might be facing and what adjustments I might need to make. I also journal too. So after a session or before, I will write in a journal daily with, actual pen and paper, which I think is so outdated, but I do it and sort of write out my thoughts, kind of a brain dump at night and sometimes in the morning, sort of a preparatory journal.
Do you get nervous?
There are times when I get nervous, sure. Less so at poker, because I've done it so many times. But if I'm, dabbling in something different, there's, some jitters that could occur if I'm playing chess or if I'm playing, the golf for really big money. That can be fun and nerve wracking. But typically with poker now, because it's something I've done for decades, I don't get all that nervous anymore. But there are occasions where I do.
Yeah. You mentioned that the games can be 8 to 10 hours, and I understand you're involved in a 25,000 hand right now, which over a period of what, 6 weeks?
Yeah, well, it's actually 20. It's a match that I took on against an opponent who challenged me. 25,000. We agreed to play 25,000 hands at high stakes, where you could win or lose millions of dollars throughout that. But the agreement is, 20. We will play 25,000 total hands on the internet, and at the end, whoever wins the money is declared the winner, and also gets to keep the money, however much that is.
So tell me about the physical preparation that you do before a tournament. You're eating, drinking water, and how you came to this realization that diet was important in being a better poker player.
Yeah. So in my early 20s, much like most people in their early 20s, I didn't do things the best way. I would go to this tournament, like I mentioned, in Tunica, Mississippi, and I'd go to the bar with the guys and have drinks, get to bed at like 5 a.m., roll out, and then got to play a tournament at noon, roll out of bed at like 11:40. Brain is foggy, clogged. Who knows what I ate, and who knows what I'll eat during that day. And, a couple hours later, I crash and I'm out of the tournament because I just didn't have the mental energy to play 12, 14 hours for 6 straight days. And I knew it too. There would be moments where I'd be like hungover and just sitting there going, I don't know, man, I should just call here because if I lose, I can go to bed. And that's what I need to be doing right now. So I was lucky to make the mistakes at an early age that allowed me to really sort of dissect, like, what am I doing here? And I made the decision in my 20s to sort of really look at diet and health and all these types of things. And when I ate meat, because I grew up eating meat, there was always, it didn't sit well with me, digestively, if you will, without getting into too much detail, but I'm sure you know where I'm going with that. So I started to do more research. And as I mentioned, I went vegetarian first. And then, and the main reason I went, vegan ultimately is for health. And then it became a combination of the big three. But the more I learned about it, the more I understood, which was, just the environmental impact. And of course, I love animals. So, the way that they're treated. So it became like a combination of the three. But in terms of I've learned a lot over the years just about how, so for example, physical fitness and how important that is to be able to, play long hours. And also just learning what type of vegan diet works best for me. Because, there's a lot of mistakes I think a lot of people make when they become vegan because they don't really understand how to get, what their body needs in the same way as they did before. And so it takes some learning and it takes some time, but there's so many resources available today that it's much, much easier. And for me, I'm very regimented. I eat at the same time, I have right now, because I'm bulking, if you will, I'm gaining muscle. I eat very regimented. I eat the exact same thing, on a 4-day cycle, but I flip it. And that really helps. It just makes it easy. It takes out one of the decisions of what am I going to eat today? I already have it written out. I already know what I'm going to be eating. And it makes it easy for me to have one less thing to think about.
So when you're, long poker tournaments, you need a ton of endurance and energy, and that's what you were lacking. And you said, all right, let me take a look at my diet. In fact, I think I read, you said I either need to take a look at my diet or alcohol. I'm going to look at the diet first. Is that true?
Well, I wasn't going to not drink.
Okay, so that was. I feel you. I like me some wine, so I think I would look at the diet too. So,
yes.
How did you get from I got to look at my diet to increase my energy and my endurance for these tournaments? Why vegan? Why not all the others? Paleo, keto, anything, slim fast.
Well, I think for me personally, the first thing that came to mind was just the digestive issues that I was having, mm-hmm. right? And then I was like, well, let me see what happens. Cause it feels whenever I would have a steak or something like that, I didn't feel good the next day and the day after that. So I was like, well, let me see what happens if I cut that out. And right away I noticed I was more regular right off the bat, which was a big plus, not one less thing to worry about when I'm playing poker, cause you don't get you're playing for, you don't get a break. You can't just leave the table and go to the bathroom if you need to. You gotta you only get a break every couple hours and stuff. So that was the first thing I noticed was just digestively how important it was. And then I just started to do more research and I started to do more reading on the topic. And it made logical sense to me. I never understood the one thing that always stuck out to me that someone said, I think years ago, was how we got comfortable with the idea of eating pigs and cows, but dogs are pets. Mm-hmm. And I've seen cows and pigs play and they have love, and they're cute to me and all this sort of stuff. It's like, are dogs just beloved and not eaten because they're cuter? Like, is there any logical rationale? Like when I ask people now, I'm like, so how did you get to the point where you decided that you'll eat cow and pig, but you won't eat dogs and cats, and that grosses you out, right? Like, how did you get there? And the truth is, you didn't get there. It was just indoctrinated into you as a child. Like I've seen many little kids that are 4 or 5 years old who are explained that, what they're eating is an animal. And they're like, but I don't want to eat it. I love it, because they watch cartoons and they see that. And so we learn to forget, I guess, or, people who are eating meat learn to forget about the rationale and the logic, because you have to in order to get past it. There's a book written called, I think it was like Why We Eat Cows, We're Pigs, or have dogs as pets, or something like
Melanie
that.
Joy.
Yeah, right. It's a great book, and it really hits the nail on the head, which is sort of the rationalizations people have. Like, well, dogs, that's a friend. I'm like, but why? It's meat. And in Asian cultures, they do eat dogs, right? And we look at that. We look at that here as disgusting. Oh my God, how gross that they're eating dogs. How wrong is that? Based off of what rationale? There really isn't a way to defend the idea that, like, well, no, cows are bred for food. Well, you could breed dogs for food too, So it never made sense to me. And, that's why I guess I was open to the idea of, vegetarianism first, and then, veganism ultimately.
Mm-hmm. When you're on actually on the floor, do you bring your own food? Do other people just order from wherever, the hotel or the casino, wherever you're playing, and you bring your own food?
Always. Yeah. So my mom always taught me real well when it comes to food. Like, she would always, make me lunch for school and all that stuff. And even after later, I was playing poker, she would make me a big bag lunch. I'd be going to a casino. I'm the only guy, like the only nerd at the table who brings his own lunch. They're all ordering from restaurants and things like that. But then ultimately I realized, like, especially back then, in the mid 2000s, like if I would fly to Barcelona to play a tournament, like I'm sort of dependent upon what they have there. And a lot of times, they put ham in the bread. It's like, there's like nothing to eat. So I realized how important it would be for me when I do travel to, sort of plan ahead. One app that was very helpful for me was an app called Happy Cow. Happy Cow, sort of, you can put where you are, and it gives you sort of vegan options that are close to you. And I found vegan restaurants in Barcelona. So what I did now was, if I was going to go to Monte Carlo, for example, which wasn't very vegan friendly, I made a deal with Loving Hut, I think it was. They don't deliver, but I called ahead and asked them to deliver. I paid for it, and I made sure to have food while I was there. And then, of course, when I'm home and I play the World Series of Poker, I park a trailer, literally like an RV, outside the Rio that has a full kitchen and a fridge. So on breaks, I can go and have prepared meals that, that I have someone help me make. But it's very, very important for me anyway, to plan ahead, because otherwise I'd be really, really frustrated, right? Because I'm like, I would get angry, and I'm like, I can't compete and play in an event if I'm like, starving and complaining. And so I realized I had to take it upon myself and to plan ahead, and, to whatever, bring some things with me to tide me over, whether it's a protein bar or some sort of snacks.
Yeah. I read in an interview that you said that you knew dairy was bad, and you said nobody thinks dairy is a good idea. So giving it up for you was kind of a no-brainer, which was obviously that step from veg to vegan. I wish that were true, that no one thought it was a good idea. We wouldn't even have to be here. Switch for Good could just evaporate. But I love that you said that, love that you feel that way. Where do you think the status quo is as far as that conversation goes? And what did you mean by, nobody thinks dairy is a good idea?
Yeah. So, to expand on that, like when you look at, people that are considering themselves to be healthy or eating a healthy diet, whether it's paleo or what's this, like Atkins 3.0 now, keto, all this, one of the, common threads among all these different diets is the idea that, like, to limit or expunge dairy completely, right? So if you look at, I think CNN did a review of like the top 8 different possible diets, and predominantly the best ones were, dairy free. Like, we know, obviously you guys know that the vast majority of the population is lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
Right. There's a reason you can't just drink a gallon of milk. I can drink a gallon of wine, but I can't drink a gallon of milk without puking, right? Because the body, rejects it. So I guess when I say nobody thinks that, it's like very few people think like having an excess of dairy is part of a healthy diet. I know that the 4 main food groups, which used to be 13 and before that was 17, then, now there's not even like, it's fruits and vegetables in the same group. Like, those are not the same things. Like, but they've done that marketing wise to convince us that, well, meat and dairy are 50% of what you need to be eating, which, we know is not true.
That's a very good point. So you're so successful as a poker player. When people see you, when your opponents see you or your fans see you, how you eat, how you prepare, how you're fit, does that have an influence on them, or are you still kidded about it? Do they actually attribute that to your part of your success as you do, or do they just think, oh, that Daniel, he's got this aberration where how he eats, he's really extreme?
Yeah, well, there's been an evolution there too. I think a lot of the younger generation has taken lessons from, some people like me and whatnot. Like when I go to the gym now, and I'm in Barcelona, I see the gym's full of, high-end poker players, and they're all conscious of what they're eating. And they're not all vegan. There are some who are vegan, but they're at least thinking about what they're eating and trying to eat what they consider healthy. Like, we'll have disagreements about it sometimes, but I think there's been, I try not to. The thing that's difficult about being vegan is, like, everyone jokes about how do you know someone's a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you, right? Like, it's difficult though, because like when people see you eating something different and unique or whatever, they're like, what is that? Okay, well, this is like a seitan barbecue sandwich. Well, what's that made out of? Is that healthy? Where do you get, so it's inevitable that it's going to happen. And I try to handle it not in a militant fashion, because I find that does more damage than good, right? Because then you get everyone just go, yeah, but bacon. I'm team bacon. I'm like, okay, cool. If that's all you have as a retort, you're team bacon, well, good for you. But I'm not going to look to, get into arguments with people. I like to have the discussion, about different foods and stuff like that. And I also think it's important not to pretend that I know everything, because I don't. And I think every human being is different. There are some, body types who will do better on a vegan diet than others. We're all different. I do believe that, everyone can adapt to a vegan diet, but, not everyone is supposed to have the exact same diet. Like an 80-year-old woman, versus a 23-year-old, athlete, the likelihood of them requiring different types of diets is very, very high. I mean, it's very unlikely that, what's best for her would be the same as what's best for him at that point of his life.
Mm-hmm. What do you think one of the most successful conversations you've had on veganism? And you said, it's so important not to lambaste people and just, be kind and easy and answer their questions and, let them go on their journey. But, we, at the end of the day, we eat meat in society because everyone else eats meat. What we were talking about earlier, the status quo is a really powerful manipulator. And so how do you, what I don't know. I'd love an example. Maybe you're sitting at the table or wherever you might be, of a successful conversation where you walked away and you were like, yeah, that I saw a light bulb. What did you say, and how did you behave?
Yeah. So the one conversation, and it's similar to what I was saying before about the book. It's asking a question to wake people up to realize that, whoa, okay, so I never did make this decision consciously, and just simply say, like, how old were you when you decided to eat meat? Mm-hmm. Well, I always ate meat. Okay, well, so interesting. So how did you decide, like when did you decide that, cows were food, but you would not eat dogs? And like, what are you talking about? My parents taught me. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we learn a lot of things from our history. It doesn't necessarily mean it's right. Like our ancestors, saying like we've all, people have always done that. Well, people have always done a lot of bad things. Like in the old days, slavery was legal. Not to compare, make a comparison, because people go, but the fact is, just because, our ancestors did something doesn't mean it was the best option or it was even a good idea. And just waking people up to realizing that they've been indoctrinated to a certain degree. Now, they may continue to choose to eat meat, but now they've been woken up to this sort of realization that they can't rationalize. They can't rate, dogs are, hunting, dogs are man's best friend. Okay, well, how did that happen? How was that decided? How did poor cows not get a shot at that title? You know what I mean? Yeah. And so just opening up that conversation and also acknowledging that, I might not be right about everything, and hearing their points and saying, you're right. Absolutely. I think, there's certainly ways to eat a healthy diet eating meat, But I just want to also interject and say that like the myth that you can't be healthy if you're vegan is just that, right? I do believe, there are diets people could have that, have, low quantities of meat or fish, and they'll be fine, right? But the assertion that you can't be strong, healthy, and have all the nutrients on a vegan diet, that's the one I look to dispel. And if we can get there, then we have sort of some common ground. I'm like, listen, I respect the fact that you eat what you eat and you think it's healthy, but just know that eating my diet, I'm not deficient in anything. I'm doing just fine. I'm getting everything that you're getting. Where do you, like the B12 conversation, is a big myth that meat eaters think, well, I get my B12 from eating meat. Well, where do you think the meat gets it?
Exactly.
From supplements. It's not getting it from the soil, right? So it's just, that's the biggest one. And I think Game Changers, the film, which I actually was an associate producer on as well, did a really good job of sort of dispelling a lot of myths that, being a vegan holds you back from your true potential as an athlete. And I think, you being involved in all the other athletes really sort of like opened up a lot of eyes to people going, whoa, wow, this is impressive.
Now this can happen. Did you notice we talked about, just the endurance and the energy that changed for you at the table, and that's what you were after in the first place. What about your mental clarity and focus? I'm not great at math, so I can't even imagine. I mean, you're memorizing the 52 cards every single time, I'm assuming, and which ones are out and which ones aren't yet. So, I mean, the mind is, obviously the most powerful tool, I'm assuming, to be successful at poker. Did you notice a change upstairs?
I did notice, like, especially after really fine tuning the vegan diet, where I was really getting everything I need, that, as you mentioned, the mental clarity was really, really there. The ability to focus for long periods of time. Also, most importantly, not getting sick. Yeah. Like not feeling lethargic and not feeling tired, because especially when you're playing poker tournaments, we talked about 10, 12 hours. Sometimes these things go 16 to 18 hours, right? If you're exhausted after a big turkey dinner, and then you come back to the table and you got 6 more hours to play and your brain's not working and mine is, that's when the real big money's being played for. And that's when I'm at my most sharp and my most alert, because I am fueled by, things that serve me well.
Yeah. So what are your brain foods?
Yeah.
I'm going to write them down.
What are my brain foods? I don't even know. Like, I mean, really, like, I wouldn't even say that I have specific food. I just eat the vegan diet that I'm on now, which the only thing that I look to focus on as a vegan, and I think this is something for a lot of new vegans who struggle with this, is like my fiber intake. Because I think a lot of people think like, where do you get, vegans, no matter what, like, you're going to get plenty of fiber, and in some cases, way too much. Like, I think a risk of like people who are, switching to vegan diet is they feel this bloat and this gassiness because they're just eating like beans and lentils and broccoli and cauliflower, which are all good, right? But if that is like the brunt of your meal and you're getting sometimes 10 times the amount of fiber you can get, that can cause a lot of uneasiness, in your stomach. So I guess the one thing I focus on is, just monitoring, like getting a reasonable amount of fiber and not too much so that, I feel good while I play.
Well, a lot of new vegans, they will eat a lot of vegetables and their microbiome isn't used to that. So they need to feed that microbiome so that it is adapted to having so many vegetables and fiber, like you said. So can you share with us, you mentioned that you're on a diet now that is pretty steady, and that you use that same diet for your tournaments. Can you share with us what you're eating and how often and how it goes? I'm sure our listeners would love to be able to learn from that.
Yeah, well, I actually eat really fun food. Like, I make it fun. I bought this thing called the Yonanas. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's a product where basically it's just a little machine where you take frozen bananas and you can put any other frozen fruit or whatever you want in it, and then you just stick it through, and it's ice cream with nothing else. It is incredible. So like, for a snack, I might have like, banana ice cream with almond butter or something like that. But as far as like staples, I'm like using tofu, seitan. I do, do some protein shakes occasionally here and there, as well as like, a decent amount of, I use like a green lentil pasta, which is very high in protein. Also, obviously rice is a big, part of my diet as well. Rice, pasta, what else do I eat? Seitan, as I said, and seitan can be made a lot of different ways. there's I mean, I feel like I'm promoting all these different companies, but there's another website called GTFO. It's vegan, and it's like a vegan grocery store.
Okay.
And they make a whole bunch of like faux meats and stuff like that have pretty good macro profiles, I think. And so sometimes I'll dabble in that. For breakfast this morning, I made pancakes, but I made them with vital wheat gluten and chickpea flour, right? Mm-hmm. So they're just like packed with protein. And I'll make basically those are the staples, right? Beans I eat, of course, but like I don't use beans as a primary protein source. I use like tofu, seitan, or like a protein powder. But I don't use, because I think that's the mistake a lot of people make, or when they have that gut problem, is they're just like, I got to get my protein, so they just eat this big. I remember watching a video, these two bodybuilders who like they do this thing where they like try 1 month as a vegan or 1 month on keto. And they did the vegan thing for a month, but they just ate beans. And the guy was like, a week in was like, if I was at the gym right now, they would kick me out because it's not good, right? So, yeah. So I think, a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, of course, and greens. And that's pretty much, and again, I think the biggest obstacle people have sometimes, especially if they're trying to gain muscle, is like, what sources of protein are they looking at? And I think tofu gets a bad rap because there's been like a real bad sort of campaign against this idea that soy is going to make you have boobies. I still got...
You don't have any. I was just going to say it's so impressive. You don't see any man boobs on you at all. Really quick, it is helpful for people. I don't feel like you're promoting this because I hadn't heard of this site. You said it is GTFO. It's vegan. That full.
Yes.
Oh.
So GTFO. It's vegan. Okay. You can go there, and it has it has everything. It has like faux meats and cheeses. It has bakery items. It has cakes. It has pantry and stuff like that. It's really, really good. Everything on there is absolutely vegan from a wide variety of companies. You can buy Gardein, Impossible, whatever you're looking for. Kind of candies and treats, all the good things. So I found that site about 3 months ago, and we order from there pretty regularly. And it's great. Yeah, I mean, just really fun to just kind of shop online.
Do they also make their own food, or they're selling all other brands?
I believe they sell brands.
Okay,
so
cool.
They basically they buy and sell. I mean, literally probably 90% of the stuff that you're eating now, you can get on GTFO. It's vegan, and some new stuff that you look at and go, ooh, I want to try that.
Fun.
When you have an 8-hour or even a 16-hour tournament, can you snack at the table, or is it just drinking and smoking that you're allowed to do at the table and no food? What are the rules, and is it easy for you to bring your stuff, your banana?
There's no smoking allowed in poker rooms anymore.
Oh, okay. Not even overseas.
Yeah, well, only in the Asian countries, they just can't stop them from smoking. But when I was 23, everyone smoked, and it was brutal. I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to do this for a career because, it's secondhand smoke is just as bad, right? Luckily, there was petitions, and all poker rooms are non-smoking, so people have to leave the room if they want to smoke. But yes, you can have snacks at the table. You can, in a lot of poker games, people just have like full meals. Like you can just order from a fine dining restaurant, and people will get like a tray brought to the table. For me, obviously, I bring thermoses and I bring my little stuff, and I'll eat at the table. I try to eat on the breaks mostly because it's kind of messy, especially if you're eating something with your hands, touching the chips and it's kind of gross. So I try to eat on breaks, but I sort of shifted away from snacking. I used to snack a lot more, where I would eat like 6, 7, 8 times a day, constantly snacking. Now I typically stick with about 4 real meals a day. And like, so basically three basic meals and 1 sort of, snack meal. And I find that's, I don't know, for some reason it works better for me. And I think, there's a lot of people who do the intermittent fasting, they do this, they do that. For me, 4 decent sized meals a day seems to work really well.
Mm-hmm. What is life like as a professional poker player in a pandemic? I mean, obviously you can play online, but it's not the same. What are you missing?
Yeah, well, the World Series of Poker this year was played online, unfortunately, because we had no real choice. So I do miss kind of the competition, going down to the Rio every day. It's a 6-week period in the summer that hopefully this summer we can, get back to. I don't know, might be a little early, but I miss sort of the interaction. and being able to, play against people where you actually see them. But there are a lot of benefits to playing online. Like I can wear underwear. I never have to leave my couch.
And wear whatever you
I
want
can
from
take
the
my
waist down.
laptop to the bathroom and do my business, and nobody's watching. So there is a lot of convenience, but certainly one of my strengths is, the ability to read people.
Yeah.
And that's lost when I play online. Like online is just about the numbers, right? But when you're playing live, I get to actually make decisions based on, physical body language reads.
Okay, so it's not like on a Zoom type of scenario. You can't see their faces online?
No, when you play online poker. So for example, if you're going to go on GG Poker, you could have an avatar, right?
Oh.
And you'll get your cards and it's all virtual, right? So you don't actually see the people. You'll see their name. Like, you'll see like, oh, Dotsy or whatever name you come up with. And so I know who I'm playing against. I can make notes on you, but it's not interactive in that regard. No.
And you can't also ask people, you can't do your jibber jabber. Like, what do you do for a living? And then make wow, I didn't realize that.
In the chat, but you definitely lose a lot of the nuance of, also you can see too when people are visibly upset, right? So you can, like, when you're sitting at a table and you see someone just lost 3-4 hands and they're annoyed, that's going to affect their gameplay going forward. They might start to press, they might start to push, and bluff and take more risks and things like that. So that's another thing that, you lose out when you play online. It's just, you can't see if the person's throwing their mouse across the room or anything like that.
I wanted to ask this. Dotsy and I'll speak for myself. Dotsy, tell me if this is the same for you. But not only did going vegan, we went for the animals originally, and then the good health and feeling good came as a bonus. But one thing that I didn't expect was how I changed as a person in terms of my empathy and my heart. I was always empathetic and sort of, very in touch with feelings, but I just started looking at the world completely differently after I went vegan. And I had been vegetarian for 33 years before I went vegan, also in 2010. Did you change like that?
I think there are some things for sure that, I'm way more mindful of. For example, before going vegan, like if there was an ant or something in I'd stomp it, just like shoo it, get out, I never have a second thought about it. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to get him outside, without actually stomping it, because actually there is an emotional response that didn't exist before to like killing this creature, right? Like, who's not doing anything wrong. Like, it doesn't know this is my house. It doesn't know it doesn't belong, in my sink. It's just looking for water or whatever the case may be. And so, I think it's easier for people to have empathy for example, puppies, because they have eyes and facial expressions that we can relate to, right? You look at that and you see humanity, you see love, right? And we don't see that with some of the other creatures, like, that maybe you don't have that relationship with, whether it's a chicken or a turkey or, a bug. And I think for me, it expanded my, I guess, respect and appreciation for all living things, including the planet itself. Like, and seeing, the destruction of what we're doing because of factory farming and all that stuff. So it really opened my eyes to being more at one with not just, I love dogs and I don't want to eat cows and pigs, but like, the world is beautiful. And if we want it to stay that way, we're going to have to make some significant changes. We can't just keep dumping stuff and, destroying our rivers and our lakes and, the climate is. We have to make some serious, changes. And I think that veganism is one way to make a huge difference in a lot of areas.
What are your other loves besides veganism and your wife and poker?
Well, you got those in order, right?
I did. Okay.
Yeah. I love to play and I do love golf. I'm also, because I'm Canadian, I love hockey. So I watch all the games, go to the Vegas Golden Knights games here in town. And yeah, hockey's certainly a love. I spend a lot of time on my fantasy hockey team, too much time probably. And of late, not because of Queen's Gambit as much, but maybe a little. Again, I started playing chess like 2 years ago, and that game is fascinating to me. It's so hard, it's so complicated, and I'm not good at it, but I'm getting better. And I enjoy pretty much any time I take on a new, I enjoy the process of learning.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who ultimately become successful, it's because they enjoy the process. Like, some people say, I want that. I'm like, but do you want to do all the things it takes to get there? And do you enjoy that? Because if you don't, the chances of you succeeding at that say, for example, some says, I want to be a famous, rich actor. I'm like, okay, well, do you want to sit on a set for 8 hours and wake up at 6 a.m. and shoot one scene and then say you have to do it all over? Like, if you don't love it, if you don't actually love the process of acting and doing it, the chances of you being successful at it are very slim, I think.
How is your experience on sets? I know you've been on quite a few sets.
Yeah.
Well, the hurry up and wait thing is a real thing. Like, so here's
But that's
the
what
thing,
poker's
right?
a lot of waiting too, or maybe
Sure.
it's not.
The difference is like I'm quite anal and punctual. Like I don't unfortunately my internet was out because I'm never late for anything except I was this morning. But I don't do late. So like when, I understand why like on sets they say, okay, we need you here at 7 a.m. They really don't need you there till 11, right? They don't. You get there at 7, you sit around, nothing happens till like 11 and they're just like, well, but you're on set, right? Because again, there's a lot of moving parts, but I'm like, I tried to tell them, I was like, listen, if you need me here at 11, right? You tell me, and I promise you, I'll be here at 10:30, right? I'm not gonna, like, because that way you don't have to give me the 4-hour buffer. But there's definitely a lot of that. I enjoy it. I think it's interesting. I've done little bit parts and some things here and there, and a lot of typically cameos or whatnot. But I find them fun. I find it interesting. And obviously, I played a lot of poker on different sets, and I'm very comfortable in that environment because it's, that's my thing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
no, it's true. I think the smartphones have really helped on a set because you don't feel like I could be working, I could be doing other things because now you can bring your computer. But and you can't really read in the time that they're making you wait because you never know when they're going to call you. So it's hard to get into a book. So I knit. That's what I did when I was waiting. Yeah. And so I did learn some new skills, crocheting and knitting.
Where's my scarf? I've never even seen anything.
I haven't done it in a while because the smartphone's been around for 12 years. So,
I mean, that's the truth, though. With the smartphone, like the idea of boredom really should no longer exist for most people. You find a game that you like to play and you can kill a couple hours doing that or whatever the case may be. I never get bored. And I think partly because of, a smartphone.
Daniel, I want to encourage you because I know you seem reticent. Tell me if this is true to actually talk about your veganism a lot, but it's very inspiring. You really light up and you're very gregarious and open and warm. And I don't think people will feel like you're lecturing them or pushing them. And I know there's so many fans that you have who want to emulate you and have your success, both in life and in your vitality. So I really do hope that you don't feel that you really do share this knowledge and gift that you have.
Well, I know I appreciate that, and I do think it is important. I do look at it, and I try to think of like, okay, well, what is the line and how much is too much, right? Because I know, for example, on Twitter, people are following me not for diet advice, right? They want to know poker stuff. So, similar to like if, I was to talk about politics and things like that, people typically want me to stick to poker. You get all that, like, stick to what you know. Having said that, when you do have an audience, as you said, I can throw in some nuggets. Oddly enough, before we came on today, I talked about the fiber thing, and I put the tweet out there. He said, if you are a vegan, and you're feeling a little bloated and gassy. And I had a few friends who had to try it. They thanked me for it. He says, my wife thanks you because like she's been feeling that. And, maybe that'll be something that you give a try. So I try to, whenever I feel like there's something important to say, I do so. Again, without the extreme militant, I try not to be militant because I have been in the past. Like I have been that militant vegan guy who's like, I'm right about everything and you're wrong. And it just doesn't work in conversation. So we have to find a common ground. There's another guy who I watch on Instagram who I think does a really good job. And his name's Earthling Ed.
Yeah, we've had him on the show. He's wonderful.
Great. Like he really does. Like I watch his videos and he does this thing where he's like, okay, if you're a meat eater, come explain to me why or other stuff. And he has these like respectful conversations with people. And I think that's the approach. I think, sugar gets more than, or what is it? What's that saying? Honey does better. I don't, you know what I mean?
Something like that. I don't even know it, but yeah.
Honey with sugar. But I think that certainly doing that and edging people towards it. Because I think for a lot of people, they think, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, well, you could, you just don't want to. And that's okay. But like the idea that you can't, let me just dispel that part. You could if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. And at the very least, I know that I've actually convinced a lot of people to go vegan, right? Which is great. And then I also do know that I've had a lot of people consider cutting back, and they're doing meatless Mondays or whatever the case may be. And I'm like, that's a win. I don't want to like live in that world where like you're all or nothing. Yeah. Like, do the best you can. Like, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, you know, is in Game Changers. Apparently, you know, sometimes he has eggs or whatever. Like, we shouldn't demonize him, you know? Right. Oh, you know, he's no longer part of us. That's a mistake, I think. We need to be more welcoming as a community, if you will, and understanding of just like, listen, a lot of these things have been indoctrinated in people's brains forever. They believe this is absolutely a fact, all right? We must do this. So it's going to take a while to break that chain, but we are slowly but surely moving towards that, I think.
I think you're a powerful activist.
Yes, and all your stories of your personal experience are really inspiring about how you have mental clarity. You're able to play better. Those are things that people really appreciate hearing, and it will never come off as dogmatic.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, again, like the Game Changers it was a game changer. You know, I remember when they approached me about it with the idea, and just to see it come to fruition in the way that it did, and I think it made such an important impact that, you know, going forward is really opened up a lot of opportunities to, you know, spread the news, if you will.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show and for all that you do. And good luck in your poker games. We hope COVID is done soon so you can get back to playing at the Rio in person.
Yeah, reading
and
people's
all
faces.
And all around the world.
Well, I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's real great, and thanks for having me on the show. I enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite subjects, of course, and you know, it feels like a free forum to do so with people that are like-minded.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Until next time. Thanks, Daniel.
Cheers.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.